claim against their name.
Yes.
And we've had over probably $600 million taken from our treasury at the state of Kansas, $600 million that have went out to who knows where, people out of the country probably, that have hacked in. Meanwhile, the number one complaint we get from people are the folks that truly need the help can't get into the system. The governor's had over a year to fix the problem, and it's still not fixed, but that's absolutely the number one concern that we are still getting, even though it's not a federal problem. But we, of course, when the state doesn't answer, the next thing they do is call their congressman or senator. So anyway, I'll stop there. And sir, if you've got a statement or a question, I'll let you go first, but you can just say pass if you don't want to.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Great.
This may not make sense, but every time we vote for a conservative president, farm commodities go to pieces, and then when we get a liberal in there, they go crazy. Can you explain that?
No, I cannot. I think it's what the commodity prices we're seeing today, though, are based upon the works of a conservative president. That during President Trump's time, we renegotiated over 50% of the ag export markets. So we renegotiated bipartisan or a trilateral agreement in the case of Canada and Mexico, but we also did bilateral agreements with South Korea, China, and Japan. So record amounts of commodities, especially beef is the big one that was introduced into China. China had no beef going in forever. And now they're just popping the charts off of it, right? The great thing is we have a product that no one else in the world can replicate. No one else can grow American beef like ours to make it taste like American beef. Once they've had our beef, they don't want anything else. It's almost addictive when you go out, when I've been able to travel to some of these countries, how much they like American beef. But it's really, in Japan, I think is our number one export market for beef, and their numbers are up 25 to 30%. So President Trump got those other countries to remove their tariffs to put us on an even playing field with Australia and Brazil, and here we are, our export products are up. I think that's the main issue. And I think there's some dollar manipulation going on with China as well, so the dollar's been devalued, which kind of helps trade for American farmers. So I think that even the economy we're seeing today, the rebound of the economy, is a reflection of the foundation that President Trump set up over the last 4 years. And I understand President Biden is going to take all the credit for it, but so far he's pretty much just driving the Trump train on most issues. But we're going to keep fighting. We got a long ways to go. When I talk about agriculture, the biggest concerns I hear from folks are input cost and regulations. And I'll let someone else go next here before I keep going about it. I can talk about agriculture all day. Yeah. Who else?
I'll start. First of all, the border thing, it's beyond a crisis. It's a travesty with the child sex trafficking and rape that is happening to these little kids. It's sick. Secondly, I'm a white Christian conservative male Trump supporter that owns guns. Okay. And I feel like I can't speak freely. I also believe the election was rigged. They're coming after people like us, and it worries me. I've lost business contracts because I'm a white, straight, male Christian conservative. Being me, I literally could not bid on a contract with a large energy provider in the state of Kansas because I wasn't able to check one of the boxes.
Okay, great.
So that's what I feel like.
I appreciate it, and I know I feel exactly what you're feeling in so many ways. I remember going just entering into medical school, being discriminated against since I was a white male whose parents worked, right? And but yet didn't have enough money to have affluence and some of those things. So I hear you. Let's talk about the border just for a second. I've been to the border 3 times. Was there at its peak moment of being worse during President Trump's time before he implemented his policies. Was there about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's multiples worse today than then. Multiples. I would say 4 to 5 times would be a good number. The crowding that I see in these detention centers, they were called cages. So President Obama builds these cages, President Trump inherits them. They were called cages, but now they're detention centers, right? We're spending $50,000 to $70,000 per person as they come through the system. It's even worse than you could imagine, though. It is absolutely a healthcare crisis, it's a humanitarian crisis, and it's a national security crisis. And really we need to look at it in at least all 3 of those realms. But what you need to understand is President Biden wants this crisis. The Democrats don't want to solve it. It's very obvious they don't want to solve the problem. Humanitarian, you're absolutely right. The human sex trafficking that's coming across here, a third of the people are sexually abused, a third of the kids are, and girls and boys, sexually abused on the trip. They're sold into slavery. They're used to pack drugs across the border, and if by chance they get caught, they throw out the kids to the border patrol and then they run for it, right? This President Biden's policy has made the cartel rich, richer than dealing drugs, right? Than transporting drugs. So they're getting $30,000 to $40,000 per person to transport them safely. And if you don't have one of their bands on, they'll cut your knees off, they'll blow your knees off and send you back to the people back home to say, don't come across Mexico unless you pay us first. Have no idea where Central America is getting that much money. I mean, I think most of the people in this room, if we said, I need $10,000 cash tomorrow to transport your children for the next 4 weeks, where do you get $10,000 cash? But here there are 10,000, 15,000 people every day crossing the border. We're only catching about a third of them. So the numbers that we see for every person that, and I say catch, I'll come back to that, 2 more get across. The people that we catch turn themselves in. They want the hospitality that we're going to extend them once they turn themselves in. They know they've been on this exhaustive travel, and when they see us, we're going to give them a shower, a toothbrush, they're going to see a doctor, a nurse, a psychiatrist, a dentist, more things than we do for our military. So that's just one aspect of it. Half the people coming across the border are not from Central America, and they're not from Mexico. So where are they from? And why do they want to sneak into our country, right? On a health crisis, 10 to 25% of the people coming across the border are positive for COVID. And they've been put together in a bus. They went through intake. They're putting them in these detention centers or putting them in sleeping quarters together. If you don't have it, you soon will. And I asked Dr. Fauci this in person. Why are you so concerned about making us wear masks when there's no science to support wearing masks after you've had the virus or you had the vaccine, but you don't give a darn about the people coming across the border? And he looked at me and said, it's not my job. He's the infectious disease specialist for the entire country. It is his job. And by the way, the doctors, the nurses, the Border Patrol are great humanitarians, great people, busting their tails. It reminded me of a third world country. We've done a lot of mission work throughout the world, including Central America. And that's what it was reminding me of, just being overwhelmed with the volume of people, the doctors, the nurses, the Border Patrol doing the best they can, but just overwhelmed. And really, the Border Patrol is spending all their time being a nurse's aide, putting band-aids on people, going to get somebody a stuffed animal, bringing a stuffed animal for home for the little kids that have been separated. They're just incredible people doing their job the best that they can. Your other issue you talked about. This is the message I'm trying to share with people. You don't defeat hate with hatred. You don't defeat racism by being a racist. I think that this country needs a message of forgiveness, not a message of divisiveness and continued hatred. I don't see mass racism across this country, especially in Kansas. I think that in my lifetime, probably I've seen women have more discrimination against them than anybody of skin color. And I think we have to get beyond it. Our country's not been perfect. I've not been perfect. But we need to forgive each other. If you think my ancestors sinned against you, I'm sorry. My job in the Senate, though, is to give everybody an abundance of equality of opportunity. That's what my promise is. That was a promise given to me, is that if I worked hard, if I studied hard, a first-generation college student could become a doctor in rural America. And my granddad, an 8th grade dropout, farm kid. My dad became the chief of police. Because of the hard work of my parents, I had a chance to go to college. I paid for it all myself and scholarships, and my mom would send some cookies and some food with me, and I got to live with them my first 2 years in college, and I stayed at a community college rather than taking debt. But I still believe that my job in the Senate as a community member is to make sure our kids have an abundance of opportunity. The Declaration of Independence doesn't promise people happiness. It promises you the pursuit of happiness. The government is not responsible for your happiness. I think I'm responsible for allowing you to pursue your happiness, but it's really the onus is upon you. And what I'm seeing, think about what President Biden said in his speech Wednesday night. He said that the government is the people. The people is the government. And Abraham Lincoln gave a speech in Kansas, and what he said is something to the effect that the Congress works for the people. The government is responsible to the people. The government is not the people. And President Biden's vision now is that this should be a nanny state from the cradle to the grave.
Who's all involved in the cartel? Who's all connected to it?
You know, I don't know probably any more than you do. I'm not sure if you're implying there's people, certainly there's cartel connections in the United States as well, and the people that are involved in human trafficking and drugs in this country have to be connected to the cartel in some way, some shape, somehow. Yes?
Yeah. Can you tell me where the status of HR 1 is, the Equality Act,
Sure.
and where, let's see, what do they talk about this week? What are they talking about this week?
There's so many of them. I'll talk about the Equality Act while you're thinking about the next.
You know, when they talk and talk and talk and talk.
Well, the filibuster.
That.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so the Equality Act passed the House on partisan basis, which means that it has about zero chance of getting passed in the Senate. In the Senate, it'll take 60 votes to pass. What the Equality Act, it sounds really good. President Obama was the king at this, and he taught everybody how to do it. His team is still there in the swamp. To name a bill something it's not, it doesn't matter what's really in the bill, just give it a fancy name. The Equality Act, we're all for equality, of course we are. But what this bill would do, it attacks our religious freedoms, among other things. That if, Benedictine up here in Atchison, Kansas doesn't want to hire people, private teachers that don't have the same beliefs that they have, that they could lose all their government funding and their scholarships, that type of thing. It allows, of course, biological boys to compete in girls' sports and then punish you if you don't allow that. So that's a big issue going on across the country as well. My wife and I helped build homeless shelters and safe homes for battered women and children, for instance, in Great Bend. And it grew so much that on the first floor is gentlemen, the second floor is women and children. But under this Equality Act, a person could go in there and say, hey, I feel like I'm a woman today, and I want to be on the second floor. Americans don't think that's right. I don't think that you're going to find 5% of Americans that agree that's the right thing to do. So I think it'll die in the Senate and probably never even be voted on because they don't have the votes to do it. So this is why they want to get rid of the filibuster. This is why they want to be able to jam their radical policies through. So what the filibuster does is it forces 60 senators to agree on something before it becomes law. It forces us to work in a bipartisan basis so it's long-lasting law. No matter what your business is, you want a set of rules and laws that govern it for forever. Hopefully, at least a long time. If you're making tax plans, estate planning right now, President Biden wants to lower the limits on the death tax from $11 million down to $3 million. He wants to get rid of the stepped-up basis. So if we're changing that type of tax law every 2 years, you can't make a plan, right? You can't make a business plan. Your school can't figure out a budget. Your businesses, farming, you won't be able to pass on your farm to the next generation with selling off a third of it, right? So if we got rid of the filibuster, they would have the 50 votes to pass it. But I think as long as we have a filibuster, we'll be able to stop the Equality Act. And not to make things even more confusing, but there's something called budget reconciliation that they can do on 50 votes, plus the Vice President's breaking the tie on the tax law. So I'm very, very concerned that the President is going to be able to get past some of those tax changes that I just described. And he doubled down in his State of the Union speech Wednesday night. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you for coming, Senator Marsh.
Sure, you're welcome.
You seem to grasp the populist movement that's going on in the country. And what can we do to help you be more effective in your work?
No. It's going to be 2 long years. What you can do for me is give us a majority back in the House and the Senate and flip the governor's office. It is just that simple. I think if we do those 2 things, the value of them both amendment, it would also be my priority. And I'm not sure if you call that populist or not, but I think it's what God would have us to do. If Kansas can stay focused on getting a Republican in the governor's seat, getting us value them both. The 3rd seat, I know you guys are in the 2nd district, but we'll see where they're going to redistrict things. But if we can get a Republican back in the 3rd district, that would be huge. I think that we have a very good chance to flip the House, and there's a chance we could flip the Senate. I think beyond that, you know, kind of back to your point is, I feel like we have the tail wagging the dog. That this 5% of the nation is driving all this media buzz. Stay loud. Stay loud. Don't lay down. Keep fighting. Keep yelling back, saying no. We don't believe in boys competing in girls sports. We don't think there should be a fence around the Capitol. We don't believe that we should pack the court. We don't think that Maryland should get statehood. We don't think our property should be seized from us. We haven't even talked about that yet. So keep fighting. I think that, but elections do have consequences, but so do policies. What President Biden ran on was a moderate policy, but what he's showing us is he makes Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton look like conservatives.
I think he ran on a very leftist policy and then had some moderate words. It was pretty obvious that he was not tied to people who were moderate. He was talking, you know, who are the people you're around that's going to be what you are. So all these things, I mean, you mentioned, I'm glad you did, you mentioned the Declaration of Independence a little bit ago. It's interesting that that's treated like a historical document, because it is, but like it's only a historical document, because it's not. I mean, that was signed, it has some history, it has some references to things that are why it was written, but it also defines what we are. And people think the Constitution is the foundation, and fortunately it's not. It's built on the foundation. The Constitution was formable and reformable, but it wasn't able to be formed or reformed off of the base. The base is the Declaration of Independence. It's the inalienable rights. Things like the Bill of Rights are a redundant, succinct, clear help, but they are redundant. If they, and I understand this to be true, and I'm wondering what your thought is and what Congress's is. But if they were to say remove the Second Amendment, they've only removed succinct clarity. Neither has that been eliminated as a right, nor has it been restricted. Based on the foundation of what the nation was, inalienable rights are not movable. They are not an act of Congress option. What you've done is you've taken that succinct clarity out, as well as some constraints about how you would deal with the tyrannical government. And there is no removal of the rights that happens. And really, that's one of the constraints that we haven't operated like for a century plus on understanding the limits of what can be changed with the Constitution. But that's not the narrative in Washington. And so, you know, things like the religious freedom, even if H.R. 1 or whatever these things are passed, they stand outside of the foundation of the nation, which will mean liberty and inalienable rights. If there's any vagueness, it errs on the side of the people. That's the foundation.
So beautifully said. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I probably agreed with 99% of what you just said, and I couldn't tell you what I disagree with. But I'm a realist, okay? Without the Second Amendment, our court systems will go wild. So what we need the Bill of Rights for is to very clearly make sure that the Supreme Courts understand that these are, all of our rights are important, but these 10 are that we all agree upon. And you think about the Founding Fathers had this same discussion, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it was, you know, so Thomas Jefferson, I was thinking, was the person that said, you know what, we don't need any of these, because of course these are all our rights. If it's not expressly written in the Constitution, then the tie goes to the individual, right? But so the whole concept was, well, you're right, but these court systems, and what happened? So they spelled them out. So I'm a realist. And I think the point I want to make here is, why do they want to pack the court? They want to pack the court with liberal judges so that they can pass their unconstitutional laws
Right.
and then have a court turn their head to it. I think our state laws would go wild as well. I think that it would give if we got rid of the Bill of Rights, if the Bill of Rights wasn't there, then I think it just opens the door for states to pass their own laws that would be even more prescriptive. That's I hear what you're saying. You're more of a professor, and I'm more of a realist.
That's our nickname for it.
Where's Mary Ann? Professor Ann?
So the question,
Go ahead.
we talked about, you get to 2022. Well, I mean, I sit here and go, that's 18 months
That's
away. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. So, you listen to some of the stuff. Is there any hope that we're going to have some Democratic senators? I mean, is Mark Kelly and Kristen Sinema going to get smart enough what's going on in their own border, and he's going to try to save his own neck for the next election? Are we going to see some, I mean, is there any hope there that we're going to have some Democratic senators?
And a fair election.
And, well, yeah. But are they, I mean, is there any chatter that some of them are starting to wave? I mean, kind of lost all faith in Joe Manchin at this time. I mean, what is there any common sense on that side, or?
Yeah, I think over even just the last 2 weeks, those rumors, that grumbling is starting to happen. And I think the border is a great situation to talk about. Certainly Kirsten Sinema, as well as Mark Kelly, have been pretty even vocal, being quoted now that they've separated their policies from the president's on the border. So that's good to see as well. I'm going to give Joe Manchin some credit. He certainly caved on the last bill. Everybody's got their price. Can they give him enough in this so-called infrastructure bill, which is really a Green New Deal bill, enough pork for West Virginia to get him over to a yes? But I think the way the winds are turning a little bit. And I still think that people like Angus King, some other moderates, are saying, gosh, I'm not going to get reelected because these policies are not consistent with my people. So I'm starting to hear some grumbling and some pushback. But we'll see. We'll see if there's enough people that can overpower them and promise them something to get their votes. It's starting to happen. Yes,
So
sir.
the thing that probably concerns me more than anything is packing of the court, which I never even thought they could do. And what would we say their chances are of getting that done? Which I think you might have already answered that. We got a filibuster. They probably won't do it as long as we keep the filibuster. So what would you say would be their chances that they could actually pack this Supreme Court?
I've learned to never say never, but I don't see it happening. I don't see it, and they would have to lose the filibuster to start with. But it's kind of a nuclear option they could throw at us, but we've still got a couple aces up our sleeve. You have to have a majority of people there in Congress to do anything, in the Senate. So if no Republican senators showed up for that vote, they couldn't have the vote. And there's something called unanimous consent. Most of the bills pass with unanimous consent, and all it takes is one of us to object to something. So we will jam them and say what you want to about Mitch McConnell, but he's the best chess player up there. He's playing chess in 4 dimensions. Trump played chess in 4 dimensions as well. The 4th dimension is time. So I think we've got some tricks up our sleeve. We're going to make it damn hard for them to do that. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Have they come? I haven't heard much about the Arizona recount. My problem is they don't fix election fraud. It don't matter. There's not a whole lot that matters, because to me, it was complete. There was a lot of fraud in this last election.
Okay. So, agree with you, they need to fix their elections. The Constitution clearly says that the local representatives, the local state houses should control how the election is managed. The last thing you want is the federal government telling Kansas how to do the election, because that's H.R. 1. That's what they want to do with it, is change the elections to federalize them. So what Pelosi wants to do is to make it so Kansas cannot use voter ID.
Well, I don't mean for a federal government to come in and do it, but
The states have to do it.
the states have to do it.
And
But if
so,
they don't change the machines, if it's been proven that Dominion, what's going to happen there? Because if you can't change that, I mean, to me, it's screwed.
okay.
If you can't have a fair election, you're not gonna win no matter what.
Well,
And to
I
me,
still think it's up to the states to fix their rules, and what I felt happened in the last election is 6 states broke their own state laws and/or their own constitution. And I wanted to hold them accountable to do that, but now we saw in Georgia that they're tightened up their laws. And then, of course, people overreacted to that, but it's really, we have to count on the state legislatures to button up their elections.
That Pulitzer guy can only be in one place at a time, that genius. So let him do his thing in Maricopa County and we'll see.
Can you talk a little bit about 30 by 30? Because that's a hot topic around here.
Yeah. I can tell you, first of all, I'm going to fight to the death to protect our property rights.
Yeah.
And right now, I think it sounds like a pipe dream, but I thought the Green New Deal was a pipe dream as well. But so they're serious about it. From what I understand, is they want to take 30% of America's land and have them in some type of conservation. Does that mean put 30% of Kansas farmland in CRP? Does that mean that the government's going to literally just seize 30% of our land and they're not telling us what that means? And what I'm trying to do is to communicate to people what it means economically even. If you would take a third of Kansas farmland and pasture land and put it into some type of conservation easement, it would kill Seneca, Kansas. You know, your main economy here is still agriculture. So if there was a third less corn planted, a third less soybeans planted, if there was a third less of the elevators employed around here, and the people that write crop insurance, and the people that sell fertilizer and seed, if a third of their business was gone, it would drastically impact Main Street. More hospitals would be closed, more school consolidations would happen. Even cities like Kansas City, 22% of Kansas City's economy is dependent upon agriculture. The reason they have the second busiest train depot in the country is because it's full of the grains from Seneca, right? So we'll do everything we can to fight it, but they will push the narrative as much as they can. I'm trying to push them over to some conservation issues that are tried and true. So I was down in Milford Reservoir recently. And what we're doing is planting some cover crops. They think this is some brand new idea, planting some cover crops right next to the rivers, which is not real good productive land anyway, because the trees take all the moisture, right? So I think there's some conservation opportunities. I'm proud of the conservation that this country's done. I want to leave this world cleaner, safer, healthier than I found it. I'm going to depend upon voluntary efforts of American people and innovation, though, rather than the government with a top-heavy hand on it.
Is there any hope for any of the Obama or Hillary Clinton or Biden administration to be held accountable for some of this stuff?
Well, where they're held accountable is at the poll.
Yeah,
That is the place to do it. It is, well, so that's really the most effective way. You know, at the same token of like all these executive orders the president has released, I know that this is not what you're hearing from Fox News at night, but we actually have more lawsuits from Republican attorney generals at this point than we had when President Trump was in his first 100 days. So the lawsuits are happening as well, holding them accountable for their unconstitutional actions. What we don't have on the conservative side, though, is we don't have these big nonprofits out there that are able to sue the federal government. So those are the folks, these large nonprofit entities, the American Civil Liberties Union, those types of folks sued Trump at every turn as well. So there's lawsuits that can happen. And you think about it, that's what the job of the media really is supposed to be, isn't it?
Yeah, media.
Yeah.
Speaking of media, and this would be federal, I mean, I'm pretty sure that the freedom of the press also holds you accountable to not be state-run. Just practically speaking, we've got a Democratic Party runs media. How is it not provable enough to hold them accountable for being state-run media? At some point, I understand that there's a little bit of like an overreaching request of you and your position on that, but at the same time, it's the elephant in the room. We have a state-run media, basically. You can just see the parroting of all the stations and the shows on each station saying the same narrative that's coming from their Democratic Party leaders.
Hear you loud and clear. I always jump to solutions. We need young men and women, conservative young men and women, to become teachers and to go into journalism. We need conservatives to start buying more media outlets and try to level the playing field. And I'm not saying we need more right-leaning media. I just want truth and fairness and the facts, rather than every article be an editorial and an opinion page, rather than here are the facts and you decide. And we need more this side of the room.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for showing up to hear our questions. A lot of representatives, I'm not talking about specific representatives, but people that represent the people will come there and tell us what they did and then they walk off. You are asking our questions for answers from you, and I appreciate that. Really good. Second thing is, I think America could be probably twice as good as what it is today if they stopped wasting money. And I have two prime examples. I retired from the Guard about 10 years ago. And one of the things we had, I retired from the Guard over in St. Joe, Missouri. And they had C-130s over there. And shortly before I retired, somehow they got what they call the AMP program, Avionics Modernization Program. They wanted to change all the C-130s, like commercial airplanes, with a digital dash instead of the analog with the pointers and everything. Well, when they did that, the planes had to be within about 70 degrees to 80, 85 degrees on the inside of the airplane for the instruments to work. But wait a minute, C-130 is a frontline bird out in the desert, Alaska. You're gonna bring a heater up there in Alaska to heat the plane up. Well, nobody can do anything. You can't. Nothing works until you get it up to 75 degrees on the inside. And you have to have a humongous heater on the inside with this modernization program. Or you go out in the desert, you gotta have this great big air conditioner. You gotta start out 2 hours, 3 hours before the plane's even gonna go anywhere. With the planes the way they were, you could start up an hour and they would be functional to use. They modernized one airplane, and then they took St. Joe's airplane. They were going to modify all 8 of them. They modified one airplane. They found out it was going to work. Well, when they got done with it, they had to pay off the contractor. And the contract was for like 30 airplanes or something like that. So they only did 2 airplanes. So they paid off the contractor. All this money wasted. I mean, you make a contract with the company and then you cancel it. It don't make sense. That was one of the examples of it. I don't know if you followed me all the way.
I did.
You can't have a frontline bird. What they wanted to do was a frontline bird, so when the pilots, because the Guard people, the Guard pilots would fly commercial during the week. Well, they wanted to be able to step in to see what 30s are about. Well, where's this at? Where's that at? Well, it wasn't that bad.
So there's no doubt there is a lot of waste of money.
Waste, big waste. And I have an example, second example right here. When I was over there, we had a box van, big box van, V8 engine in it, diesel. And I worked avionics, electronics, communication, navigation over there. So we'd have a radar system or radios or whatever. Plus we could take our workers out to the flight line work on the plane. Big box van, worked great. About 4 years before I retired, they says, gotta get rid of that stuff. It's wasting too much money, wasting too much gas. So they gave us examples, a little bitty. The vehicle was no wider than this, no taller than this. And we had to carry, we're supposed to go out to the flight line with it, carry our equipment, our tools, the parts. And if we had extra people to train out there, we could get them out there. And I was driving like this because the roof of the vehicle was like this, and one guy over there couldn't even get his foot. He was so tall he couldn't even get his foot off the foot feed to push in on the clutch or the brake to stop. And he went through a stop sign. And I wrote to a safety hazard on base. They canceled all the vehicles. They said park them. And I have all that data here like they give you, but this is 10 years old or over 10 years old. they gave the base 4 vehicles about $9,000 apiece. And each guard unit in the United States, there's usually about every state has a C-130 guard unit. And just think 4 times, well, 46, 48 C-130 units at $36,000 a base. And they threw all the vehicles away in 4 years. And the bigger kicker about that, the big thing about it is, I pulled the records, the gas records at the end of the year on that vehicle. 3-cylinder engine. How many miles to the gallon do you think it got? 12.8 miles to the gallon. Our diesel got 18 miles to the gallon. And they traded our diesel. They got rid of our diesel.
We can have staff look into that too, Tom.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, happy to give the papers to Trey there as well. And by the way, there's contact information. I hope you sign up for our newsletter. I hope if you find that today's is positive, we hope you'll opt in. You've signed up there if you can't, if you already haven't. And then there's contact information here. You can email us and messages as well. Yeah.
Can you speak to the vaccine? Because what I am absolutely opposed to is being required to take the vaccine. I've never taken the flu shot. I don't get sick. I don't want to be forced to take a vaccine to be able to fly or to travel. Can you speak to that, and what can we do to prevent that? I'm not opposed to other people getting it. I don't care. I have family that gets it. But I don't want to be forced to tell me, the government tell me what to do about my health.
Of course, yeah. I don't want anyone to be forced to get a vaccine. I don't see that one. I don't see that's happening. On the same token, I encourage everybody to get one, every adult to get one, but I respect where you're coming from. And there's lots of reasons to take it, so that you can throw away the mask and live as free as you did before, take it. So our children are not going to be vaccinated probably I don't think we'll have an approval this year for a vaccine for the children. So there's lots of reasons to take it, but no, I don't see us forcing anyone to have to take the vaccine. We'll fight against vaccine passports as well. My general philosophy here is no more than you want me to tell you whether your school should be in person or not in person learning. You don't want me sitting there dictating the policy for Senate for Kansas. So, probably got time for one more question.
Will they pass that down to businesses? So, government won't do it, but your flight people will say, okay, now you can't fly our plane unless you have a vaccine.
I think that they would do that at their own peril. I think that they would do it at their own peril, but certainly I don't want the federal government stepping in and trying to make those decisions for them. The interstate commerce, though, is the one place we may have to sit there and figure out if there's not an option for people that don't want to do that.
We've got one more question back here.
Yes, sir.
2 parts. In any business, when you hit about 50% of borrowed money versus what you're taking in, pretty hard to make that business run. What are we now, 120% in debt versus what we bring in? Ballpark. So how's that ever going to work? I mean, who's going to pay that off? Number 2, really concerned about Biden's group starting to over-regulate business again. I've been hearing that. He's wanting to use the OSHA and all these other people, and we can't keep up with it. We can't keep up with it. So what's going to be done about those things that run this state of Kansas a lot?
Yep. People knew this when they elected his administration. He told us he was going to do this.
He didn't come from Kansas. We didn't.
I understand that, but this is, so you're absolutely right. Grab your wallets, he's going to raise your taxes, and he's going to regulate you to death. And he's going to do it all in the name of the environment, right? So yeah, you're right. It's going to happen. Agree with you. What keeps me up late at night is our national debt. It's a huge problem. I thought we were going in the right direction. We lowered taxes, we lowered regulations, had the greatest economy of our lifetime, and because of that, we had record income for the federal government. We said it again, we lowered our taxes, but we had record income for the federal government because businesses improved. And we didn't do a good job of cutting our spending, so we're going to have some type of a diet. This country's on a seafood diet. You see food and you eat it. No one's ever came to me and said, we want less of a subsidy from the federal government, right? So there's gonna have to be some major diets going on if we want to start slowing down our national debt. I still think we can do it. But yes, I'm absolutely concerned about that as well. And the regulations, they're coming. They are already happening. Katie, bar the door, and it'll kill the economy. I think one of the reasons we had a great economy under President Trump was as much the decrease in regulations as it was the decrease in taxes. So, listen, I appreciate everybody coming in this morning. I hope you felt like I answered your questions. Keep praying for us, okay? Thank you. Thanks for coming out today.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Thank you.